Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Velvet Lounge Life. Please take the time to subscribe to our channel simply by hitting the subscribe button and clicking yes, and hit the little bell notification. That will let you know when our next episodes are airing, and you have a choice of whether to watch them or not, but at least you'll know they're coming up. Also, if you have any questions whatsoever about any of the episodes of Poldark Season 5, and this is going to be episode number 2, let me know in the comments down below and I will answer your questions. Remember, everything I am going to talk about in regards to Season 5, which is the final season of Poldark, is a spoiler. So spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert. So if you want to know, stay, hang around. You can share this entire channel, let alone all of the episodes can be shared anywhere you want to share them on social media. We're totally fine with that. You don't have to ask for permission. So one of the things I'm going to do is try to get through this pretty fast. So, of course, you can always rewind to hear anything you may have missed. I will show pictures as I'm doing each episode so that you get like a little taste of what's going on, but I cannot obviously show any video. So hopefully you enjoy this, and here we go. It's so sweet. The gang is back together, or is that the band? All I know is the Poldark family is back together again. The children, their little boy, their little girl, Ross DeMelza, all of them are in London. Yes, living the high life and getting a little bit of that society into their not so blue blood. But also in London, you have Dr. Ennis and his wife, Ned and Kitty, which is Ned's wife, are in London. Yes, you have George Warleggan, of course you do. And guess what? His wife is there too. Elizabeth has come back from the dead. She's a ghost. She is a ghost. She has not come back from the dead. Only George can see her. No one else sees her. And she actually is pretty prevalent in this episode, even more so than in episode 1 of this particular series. And just remember, this is the final season of Poldark. So after this, that is it. Nothing else. The story is done as far as television goes. But in the books, of course, there's a lot more detail. And once in a great while, I might actually talk about some of the things that are in the book and how they marry with what you're seeing on television or where the disconnect could be. But that's rare that I'll do that. So it's really nice to see Ross and his family almost like they're on a working vacation. So that's really cool. Cecily is who this young lady is, and she has her eyes on the prize of Jeffrey Charles, and he has his eyes on the prize of Cecily. They make a cute little couple. The issue is her father sucks. So he wants to hook her up with George Warleggan, this poor innocent child. It is amazing how they used to throw their girl children away back then and use them as pawns just to further their own interest. And that's exactly what her father is attempting to do. She knows that, which is a good thing. Also, the good thing about her, not only is that she's a nice person, but she also basically has her own mind, which was very difficult back in that era, especially when you were supposed to be duty bound to your parents, especially your father. So Cecily is doing what she can do. Her father believes that the only place for a girl or a woman is underneath a man or walking probably a step or two behind. One of the big issues in this episode is that Ned, that's character, and that's his wife Kitty, he is He just finished a court case in episode 1 where he was not committed to prison or death, because it seems back then those were your two options. And he actually won his case, but the issue is his reputation has taken a hit. His good name has been sullied. And so he is in London trying to clear that up. But big issue is his secretary, Ballantyne with a B, and as in Boston, Ballantyne is missing. And he is the only person that can give a statement that will clear Ned's name. So he's very concerned. Others are concerned about Ballantyne's safety, because they know that the people that are trying to keep Ned down are people that will actually murder and kill to further their own financial interest. And that's really what this whole thing is about, is the fact that they want to bring slavery into the market. And not only Ned, but there are others who are against that. Plus, Ned is married to a brown lady. Hello, he doesn't believe in slavery, and he doesn't want to work for it, and he doesn't want to enslave people. But because of that, his life is in danger, his secretary's life is in danger, and others. So then you have George Warleggan, his uncle, and this schemer right here, that is Cecily's father, who are trying to make some underhanded deals. And the funny thing is he's trying to basically rip off the Warleggans. And what happens? Oh my God, Elizabeth's ghost suddenly appears, and she's having a very detailed conversation with George as to, you know, who is this man? Why are you going to sign these papers? Would Ross do that? And, you know, just they're kind of like, and the funny thing is he's going back and forth with her in front of his uncle and this guy. The guy hasn't really caught on, but his uncle knows that, like, George needs to get reeled in. So he is, like, trying to keep him even a wee bit, like, sane, like, without coming across as someone who has, like, lost their mind. But he's finding it more difficult day by day. But in the meantime, because of Elizabeth's ghost, excuse me, George does not sign the contract that this guy puts in front of him, which would have made them, oh, happy bedfellows. Then you have Geoffrey Charles, who is getting suited up and ready for his military duty. I'm dreading this part, because in the book, and like I said, 100% spoilers, it doesn't always work out fine for everybody. We'll just leave it there. But he's very happy to be going to do his duty. Obviously, he's always been, you know, just such a little soldier partner. I don't know what the right words are, but, you know, so enamored, if you will, by his uncle, who is like the Superman, Ross Poldark. So he wants to go do his duty as well. And as you know, I already talked about the fact that, you know, being in the military probably wasn't the right thing for him. We'll just say that. So George is still, of course, losing his mind. And I'm going back to that because, you know, something important to know is in the book series, the reason that George is really going completely off the deep end is a condition of his wife's dead body, and the fact that she was left in the house for so long, rotting from the inside out, to the point that the scent permeated throughout their mansion. And the way they describe the way her body looks in the book, horrifying. So in the way, one place I saw a disconnect with the television show is that obviously when we saw her dead, she was laid out in a bed. She basically just looked like she was sleeping and would get up after the scene was cut. And she was, dressed nicely. She didn't, it was nothing at all like the book. I sort of wish it was like the book now for this particular season, because I think it would even make his craziness even better. Like, he's awesome, like this actor at being crazy. I think his name is Jack Farthing or something. But it would be better if they actually didn't pretty up her death on television, I think. But anyway, yes, you see Drake. Why? Because there's a rumor in the village that Moana is pregnant. Guess what? Moana still is not pregnant because, as he says, it would have to be like the doing of the fairies, basically an immaculate conception. It would be a fairy child. And it's impossible for them to be pregnant when they have not consummated their marriage, because she was married to that horrible vicar that terrorized her. But there may be some things on the horizon for them. Next you have something that happened, and like I said, these pictures do not match everything that I'm saying, but here you have Demelza, Kitty, Ned, Ross. They had like plenty of these really nice, pleasant moments versus just, everything is fine for 2 seconds and gloom and doom. There's a lot of nice moments that occur. It actually makes it seem as if the episode lasts more than an hour, which is really nice. And so this is one where the two fellows are just so happy to have the women they had, even though they know that they were expected to marry different women. They were expected by society as well as themselves, but they were happy that they chose the women they actually loved or grew to love. In Ross's case, it was a grow to love. In Ned's case, he loved his wife immediately from the start. Let's see. Oh, there's going to be a lot of Ned having to defend his beautiful wife's honor and good name because she is a lady of color. You have a few idiots in every crowd, as a paraphrase. But then there are people who are totally fine, like they're colorblind. They're not, they have no feelings one way or another, as one should not. But then you have people who are just downright rotten and awful because she's a lady of color. But then more so, they're like being mean because of Ned's name being sullied. If his name was not sullied, him and his wife would be able to go through society in England and only have a few fools in the crowd versus having maybe 3 or 4 dozen. So he actually is always ready to put up his dukes and give someone the old 1-2 punch. And she always can talk him down from the ledge, so far anyway. And of course, witnesses to this are, of course, Ross and Demelza, Dr. Ennis and his wife. Ned decides he needs to shore up on some of his sword play, and he was, I guess, like a master swordsman back in the day, and he's actually pretty good now. And that actor, wow, that was really impressive. Dr. Ennis gives a speech. This is, George is going to get knighted. I have to go backwards. George is going to be knighted. So does it actually happen? Yes, it happens. And who is there with him and giving him advice? And it's almost as if he thinks she's tying his little neckerchief thing. Elizabeth. So he actually is the only one that sees her, of course. And Dr. Ennis, now I can get to that, he gives a speech on the insanity plea, the fact that people sometimes commit crimes or do things that they're not completely responsible for because they're insane. As you know, nowadays, that's very common to use as an excuse for doing horrible things. So I don't think they meant to take it to the extreme of what it is today, but it is what it is. And in that crowd, his wife actually defends his thoughts on the subject. There are a couple people who also defend his thoughts and kind of are going with it. One of them is a lawyer for a guy that's on trial who is pleading insanity. Go figure. The other people who don't agree with him are doctors. Some of them get up and leave the room. So something happens that's sort of important, and that is Ross receives some news that Ballantyne, with a B as in Boston, Ned's secretary, is coming out of hiding. He gets a note to meet him, and he has some important information he wants to give him that might help Ned. So you see him dashing out. Demelza, of course, reads a letter as well because she was allowed to. And Ross meets with Ballantyne, and he tells him everything that he needs to know. The thing is, you know, now Ross is like a second party to this information, which isn't bad. It's just that what other evidence do you have versus words that are, you know, someone said that someone said. So Demelza is like happy. The world is pretty gay in a way until she gets schooled by Kitty. So they're walking through the park. Everything's happy and gay until Demelza says these words. She basically says something like, you know, see, everyone isn't horrible, because remember, they went to that like social and it was not pleasant. And so Kitty's like smiling and she goes, honey, basically they think I'm your maid. That's why they're okay with us walking through the park together. And Demelza's face changes instantly, and she also starts to notice the looks on other people's faces, even people of color. Sometimes the biggest racists are the same color as you. I learned that personally. And of course, some of the worst races are people who are racist, are people who are not the same color as you. So Demelza is learning a lesson. She always knew there was bad and good, but she was hoping that there was a level of acceptance and things being okay. And then she finds out that it really isn't that. So while they're in the park, they come along and hit this little surprise. The surprise is named Jeffrey Charles and Cecily. Those two are not supposed to be together. Remember, Cecily is supposed to be getting hooked up with George Warleggan. Ew. And old enough to be her dad, by the way. And then Jeffrey Charles, obviously George could care less about his stepson. He just doesn't care. So basically Demelza tells them to keep it on the down low. Because they're like in a park, people are walking by, like this could be a problem. So the funny thing is Cecily knows that because she knows how her father is and what her plans are for him. Now some creepy stuff occurs. Okay, more than the normal creepy stuff. And that is, I'm calling her the urgent. She actually is someone who Demelza was helping because folks were starving. They needed money. They needed jobs. So Demelza decided to be nice and give this urchin a job in her house on her farm. So what you see is her in her bedroom trying on Demelza's clothes in Demelza's bedroom, touching all over her stuff and talking to the dog, literally the dog, about how she could be the queen of basically that castle. And yeah, stuff might happen, and just talking all kind of crap. Like she talks crap to the dog. She talks crap to poor Trudy, who is her boss, basically, when Demelza and Ross or whoever isn't on the property. And so that's one to definitely watch out for. And did you see what I just saw? Did you see what I just saw? Yes, Moena has actually touched and hugged her own husband. The gates have opened. Okay, not quite. Her gates are still pretty tightly closed because that vicar terrorized her so badly and abused her so atrociously. But the good thing is she is starting to soften up. She actually is going to have a conversation with cute little Valentine with a V, the little boy, and her words are going to sort of like come back to her, and she's going to be like, wait a minute, that bastardly old vicar is dead. He can't do anything to me now. I can live. I don't have to be in a prison. And so that's why she starts opening up to her own husband a little bit. And there is little Valentine. And she, what? Touches her husband's hands. Something's going to happen eventually. So Dr. Ennis wins his case of insanity. He actually testifies for that lawyer, for his client, and the fellow actually gets off by using the insanity plea. However, the judge says, wait a minute, there's more, after everyone's like cheering and jeering. And he says, but he must be confined to Bedlam. Bedlam is a prison. Basically, it's not a prison, but it might as well be, because according to Dr. Ennis, being sent to Bedlam, which is an insane asylum, is worse than death. So he sees that there is a twist in the law that has now been created. This is Ross, who has created these pamphlets that basically spell out the entire story of Ned's innocence and the testimonial of his secretary, Valentine, who is now missing again. No one knows where he is. And Ross's plan is to hand those out to, certain magistrates, not everybody, just certain people. He meets up while he's doing this with George, and he's trying to once again get George to support Jeffrey Charles going into the military. And George is like, blank that. I'm not supporting him. He's not my blood. And he's like, but you promised his mother, who you married, who you're his stepdad. And he's like, I don't basically give a damn. And then he has a nerve, George, to turn around on Ross and say something to the effect of, you know what? I'm basically responsible for my wife's early demise, but you are too. Honestly, Elizabeth was responsible for her own demise. And the reason why is if she wasn't like doing stuff on the down low and going all between these dudes, then she wouldn't have had an issue. She wouldn't have had to instigate an early pregnancy and end up dying by rotting from the inside out. But George, of course, has lost his mind, and he's seeing her and talking to her often. So, yes, that's Elizabeth right there in the shadows. And you'll actually see her a lot throughout the episode. And this is George's uncle, who is like, oh my God, George is talking to this woman again who doesn't live. He's cray-cray for the day. I got to get him out of here. And she actually comes to him and says something like, would Ross sign that contract? It sounds sketchy. This dude, who is he? You don't know who he is. Why are you suddenly like in bed with this guy? And why is your uncle why are you and your uncle so like mesmerized by his offer? It doesn't sound good to her ghost, basically. And so what happens is he doesn't sign this particular agreement to get into business with this dude. He walks out. His uncle is happy to quickly usher him out of the room, because while he's sitting there thinking about signing this paper, he's literally having a conversation back and forth with his deceased wife. So that's why his uncle has this look of horror on his face, like, my God, if word gets out, you will not get knighted. And, well, he got knighted at that point, but you will, like, you're a knight now. Like, people are going to find this out, and it's going to be bad, and no one will want to do business with us. And here you have the ladies in the park. Demelza is much more knowledgeable now. You have you can see a wee bit of Jeffrey Charles in the background, Dr. Ennis's wife, and all of them are basically talking, and the guys are actually ahead of them, and their kids are like in the middle or whatever, and they're basically just talking about their trip back to Cornwall, which they're all preparing for. And yes, what? Someone's making a little bedroom eye thing going on there. You're going to see that Moena and her husband are in a fireplace lit setting, and something happens where she, oh my God, touches his hand again. It's so amazing. On their way back to Cornwall, of course, it's too far to just take a straight ride out there. From London, Ross and his crew with Ned and Kitty, the kids, Demelza, Dr. Ennis's wife, Jeffrey Charles, and even Cecily and her dad. They're traveling separately. They don't know that all of these other people who live in Cornwall are on their way back there. Her evil dad is trying to get there because George Warleggan and his uncle went back to Trenwith, and he wants to, of course, as I said, hook his daughter up with him and also try to get him to sign that contract. But they all end up at the Red Lion Inn, and this is Ballantyne with a B. He unfortunately ends up dead in the ocean. I think he's in London when they murder him, which is Cecily's dad is responsible for that, and his henchmen. And let's see what else happens here. We have, oh, that crazy wench that Demelza hired at her house. She actually gets really sassy with Trudy, and Trudy has to get her told. But Trudy also gave her the eye, like, yeah, I kind of have my eye on you. So she may not get away with as much as she thinks she's going to get away with. What else happens? Actually, I think that might be pretty much it. I mean, every episode is just so, like, episode 1 and this is episode number 2 are just so chocked full of information. Like, if you watch the show, I would actually record it, rewind it, and watch it twice through, because the way they wrote it, it's perfect, but it's definitely one of those fast-moving machines, and I like that. I think it's really good. What you'll find at the end of this particular episode is, and I'll go through this quickly, Jeffrey Charles and Cecily reunite in Truro. George roams around his house looking for his dead wife, and his uncle is more than super concerned at that point. He's in his bedgown as he does that. And Ballantyne, as you already saw, was found murdered in the waters. Guess who they're going to try to pin some of this stuff on? There is a conspiracy to set up Ross and Dr. Ennis and Ned. Next week, some of the things that are going to occur are the following: a shooting, an ice bath, yes, an actual ice, a big jump, and a confrontation. Come on, it wouldn't be Poldark without a confrontation. So thank you guys for tuning in. This is pretty much how it's going to go because, like I said, I can't play video. Next time, I will give you a lot less, rules about how I'm doing this and just get right into each episode. Thank you for tuning in. Give me a thumbs up. Leave any questions or comments down below. And have a Poldarkian week.